There are definitely some things within the data that you can utilize to create key behavioral changes and start giving you foods that your body has actually been craving, right? Foods that help that basically give you, the amount of zinc that your body actually needs based on its absorption rates, or the appropriate amount of carbs to make sure that you're fueled properly for your workouts. All these things are included. We are what we eat, we are what our parents ate, we are what our grandparents ate, and that the change can start with you. Welcome to Consistency Breeds Growth Radio. I am your host, Justin Romare. Our incredible guest and myself talk about the cutting-edge science and consistency necessary to reach your weight loss, wellness, and performance goals. If you have nutrition goals, we have customized nutrition programs and coaches that tell you how much, when, and what to eat for every single meal. And the best part? You don't need to calculate macros in an app. Ditch the calculators. Want to learn more about our intrinsic diet? Let one of our coaches know you listen to this podcast to get 10% off. Do you own a gym or attend a gym that wants to make some money and throw a top-notch nutrition challenge with a team of certified nutrition coaches? Our team will guide your members through a nutrition challenge customized for your gym. And you'll make money for each member who signs up. If you want more information about working with us one-on-one or in a gym setting, head over to consistencybreedsgrowth.com or email us at consistencybreedsgrowth@gmail.com. We will also put links in the show notes. Enjoy the podcast. Science. What's up, team? It's Justin back with another episode of CBG Radio. So, first thing I want to mention here, you need to be on our group Facebook page. We run free monthly nutrition challenges. They're mini challenges, and they're all around building better habits, right? So it's sort of low-hanging fruit for you guys to reach some of your goals. All of them are conducive to everything in life: health, wellness, performance, weight loss, muscle gain. All of these things can be achieved through just small habits and steps that you can build. And you can do that starting with our Facebook page, right? So we run free challenges in there. We give a multitude of information. If you want to join in on our next challenge, right, head over to www.facebook.com/groups/CBG Nutrition Tribe. All right. Get on that. We'll see you there. Our topic today is all around Nutritionomics, okay? And Nutritionomics is basically the science around our DNA and how it affects our eating. So how can we make informed decisions from our DNA on how to eat, okay? And this field is emerging. There's more and more information coming out every day from top-level scientists. And now nutrition coaches like us at Consistency Breeds Growth are getting your DNA information, and then we're able to customize and make, more personalized plans for you, right? So I'll pose a question. Identical twins originate from the same DNA, right? But how is it that these identical twins have very different traits, right? They have the same genetic components, but very different traits, which is why one twin might get heart disease at 55, while the other runs marathons in perfect health. Okay. Now, nature versus nurture has a lot to do with this, but a more deeper rooted answer is found in our epigenetics, which is the study of how our DNA interacts with smaller molecules found in the environment, right? And how basically cells are manipulated and can activate and deactivate different genes, right? So to start off, I'll just give a brief sort of overview, and then I'll go into some other, sort of a better understanding of how, just to give you guys just an understanding of how this can impact what you eat, can impact your overall health. And based on your current DNA that was passed down from ancestors, we can get better information about how you should be eating, right, on a long-term basis. So DNA is genetic material, and it carries the instructions for our body's structure and function. And DNA is typically made up of 4 building blocks, which are commonly denoted as A, T, C, and G. So these are nucleotide base pairs, and basically the different combination of this DNA makes up a variety of different genes, right? These letters are called genes, and those genes provide instructions for making proteins. Okay, so how does that work, right? Genes in DNA are expressed when they're read and transcribed into RNA, right, which is single-stranded DNA. And then that's translated into proteins by structures called ribosomes. And then the proteins determine the cell's characteristics, the epigenetic changes, which can boost or interfere with the transcription of specific genes, right? So the most common way interference happens is that DNA or the proteins get wrapped around, they get labeled or wrapped around small chemical tags, right? So chemicals from our environment or whatever it is that we're interacting with create small chemical tags. They attach to the genome, and now this becomes our epigenome, okay? And some chemical tags will unwind DNA, making it basically easier to transcribe and ramps up the production of a specific protein, and the cell can survive cell division, which in turn affects the organism for its entire life. So some of these epigenetic changes can basically influence our entire life. It's basically epigenetic reprogramming. Okay? Some cells get converted into heart cells, other into liver cells. There's 200 cell types in the body, right? So it can be a number of different things. And these chemical tags can turn genes on and off, right? Depending on the different influences through chemical exposure, diet, medication, okay? Which can then lead to, further expression of things in your daily life, like people that have a heart disease versus people that have improved cardiovascular endurance. There are some genes that make a tumor suppressing protein, right, which causes the suppression of, growing of tumors inside of the body. Okay, so these epigenetic changes are essentially the reason why identical twins can grow up and have different lives. And seeing how they get older, their DNA of identical twins, in one way or another, they start to diverge. And the reason that they diverge is because of the different exposures they've had in their daily lives, right, as they age. And they become less susceptible, more susceptible to disease. So even like social experiences can impact your epigenetics, which is crazy. So in one famous experiment, there were rats that were not very attentive to their pups. And the babies basically, the genes that were used to manage stress were methylated. So they had a chemical tag associated with them. And basically the gene got turned off. Okay. And basically researchers think that some of the imprints, surviving, some of those imprints of the methylation or whatever chemical tag is on a specific gene can then be passed down. So those epigenetic traits can go to offspring, onto the next generation of your mother's or your father's experiences, right? And basically what they found in the pups is that when they turned off this specific, when the mother and father were unattentive to the pups, it made it very difficult for them to manage stress, their offspring to manage stress. So that's how they know that next generations are potentially affected by epigenetic changes. Okay. So the thing is, though, epigenetic changes are sticky, but they're not necessarily permanent. So with a better, well-balanced lifestyle, healthy diet, exercise, avoiding exposure of like contaminants and chemicals and stuff like that, you can create a more healthier epigenome. Right, and this is where myself and other members on our team are trying to understand more about how we can use markers from your DNA to improve human development, aging, overall health and wellness, and weight loss. So this is sort of some of the entry-level science for understanding epigenetics and how it can influence your DNA and now your epigenetics moving forward into your offspring, right? In some cases, you are what you eat. And in some other cases, depending on the genes that were activated through your epigenome, you are what your parents ate, or you are what your grandparents ate, which is pretty crazy to think about, right? So proteins in general, they do the most work in your cells and are responsible for every function in your body, like, the muscle tissue and the functioning of your organs, right? And your proteins also control the way your body processes food, right? So how your body processes foods is also a function of proteins. That's why it's so important that when DNA is manipulated, okay, in some way or another by our environment through RNA and is transcribed into proteins, that's how we're able to essentially understand the genes and how they're affected through a variety of different mechanisms. Okay, so instructions for making proteins can vary from person to person, and that depends on the variants within your genes. So, for example, there's one gene in the body called the FTO gene, okay? And depending on which variant of the FTO gene you have, right, whether you were born with it or it was, in some form or fashion altered epigenetically, people that have the variant for more efficient fat metabolism, right, typically have the TT variant of the gene. So this is basically just a form of the FTO gene that I was just describing. Have a better fat metabolism, people that have the AT variant of the gene. All right, and I'll get into why all this is so important to a little bit as I dive a little bit deeper into this, right? But basically different variants of these genes can lead to differences in everything from eye color. So these are the genes we express and that you guys see. So when you look at someone, you see their eye color and you're like, wow, okay, that must have something to do with their genes, right? But also what's super important is that we also can now uncover how, right, these different variants lead to how you metabolize carbohydrates, what food sensitivities you have, how you metabolize different vitamins, right? And also fats and proteins, all of these things we can determine, right? So basically we can find out, just like your eye color is blue, we can find out how different genetic variants based on one, the genes you were born with, plus the genes that you've uncovered and unlocked throughout your body, whether good or bad, epigenetically, can influence how your body processes different foods and what foods work best for your body. Okay, so for example, maybe when you go to the local farmer's market, you see carrots. You're like, wow, okay, those carrots are orange, they're delicious. But what your body actually sees is a vegetable that has moderate fiber, no vitamin D, and an abundance of vitamin A, right? So different nutrients in carrots will basically play a unique role in your body. So like fiber supports intestinal health, vitamin D promotes calcium absorption, which is good for bones, strong, healthy joints and bones and everything related to that, osteoporosis, etc. And vitamin A helps you maintain good vision as well as healthy skin, right? So if we find out from your DNA results that you are a poor absorber of vitamin A, you need to be taking in foods higher in vitamin A because you're not absorbing them well. And we know that based on your genes. So if you want to improve some of the markers associated with vitamin A, you have to take in more carrots. It's that simple, right? And there are other foods, and obviously working with a nutrition coach can help cultivate a plethora of different recipes and foods and other things that you can start to implement into your body, right? So here's another example. There's a BCO1 gene, right? That's the gene that will not allow you to basically absorb vitamin A optimally, okay? If you have a specific gene variant, the TT variant to be specific. So you want to incorporate more foods that have vitamin A, carrots, sweet potatoes, and eel, for example. Okay? So as you analyze your unique genetic profile, you can find optimal intakes of both macronutrients and micronutrients. And by combining your genotype results with a customized plan, for example, from CBG, for example, where we tell you how much, when, and what to eat for each meal, with weight loss protocols that put you at a caloric deficit, and nutrient composition of foods that actually facilitate and support that weight loss or muscle gain or whatever it is that your goals are, you will be at optimal levels of determining your health, fitness, wellness, performance. I mean, it doesn't get any, this is at a molecular level that we're talking about here, right? So a variety of different genes are analyzed based on single variants. It's called single nucleotide polymorphisms. Okay, and these genes have they're located on or associated with a genotype and a specific prevalence, and that's basically how you get these unique sets of things, and that prevalence percentage is what tells you, okay, you have this prevalent percentage, and therefore you are at a higher risk for developing type 2 diabetes, for example, or at a low risk for developing type 2 diabetes. This is how you manage these things, right? So macro and micronutrient breakdowns and analysis can help guide you through what food choices that you should make, okay? So if you're guided through a high intake of that nutrient, it's suggested that you're benefiting from consuming foods higher in that nutrient. That's why it's being recommended to you, okay? So how does this affect the big epidemic in the United States, obesity, and then weight loss and impact on behavior change, right? All these things are what people want to know about. So when it comes to genes and obesity, there are several factors that cause obesity. I mean, the main factor is the fact that you're at a caloric surplus for too long and you're basically putting on body fat. There are behavioral changes associated with that, things that are in the environment that can also affect this, stress level, sleep. All these things affect how and why someone becomes eventually obese, right? But two specific genes associated with this, right, are the FTO gene and the MC4R gene. These are the two genes that are uncovered that if people have, based on the single nucleotide polymorphism prevalences, that they're likely at more risk for being obese, right? Now, this is not like a podcast to be like, oh yeah, like find out if you're more at risk so that you can use this as an excuse. No, look, it is what it is, right? Like your ancestors at some point down the road, or you decided that you were going to eat foods that triggered epigenetic chemical tags on your current DNA that put you at a higher risk for obesity. Does that mean it can't change? Absolutely not. Like I said, epigenetics are sticky, but they're not permanent. And things can be changed by making smart choices with your nutrition, okay? So one of the genes, the FTO gene that I mentioned that puts people at higher risk, it basically codes for fat mass and obesity-associated protein, right? And there's just a strong relationship between its risk alleles and obesity, right? And more studies have also shown that the gene's risk for obesity is related to its effects on satiety and also energy intake. So how satiated someone feels after they have a meal, whether they're more likely to indulge on other things, etc. Right? And what's also super interesting is that this is not just about the energy in, energy out mechanism, it's also about behaviors to cause those people to potentially overeat and overindulge on, specific meals throughout the day. That's why the other gene, the MC4R gene, which is code for a receptor in the brain, right? And this melanocortin system that's found, this receptor, is one way that the body regulates feeding behavior and body weight and satiety signals in the brain. So the MC4R, which is the melanocortin system, the risk alleles associated with this cause reduced satiety, more food cravings, and obesity, okay? So there are genes that impact you greatly, right? Just like there are genes on the opposite end, like Matt Frazier, who can eat Snickers bars and Gatorade and still perform at the top level of his field. He hit the genetic lottery, right? Some people didn't. Some people did in some cases and then not in others. This is how you determine that. And it's through making these changes over time, seeing how you adapt to them, and if they're right for you, through trial and error, determine, your body is like, you can do experiments on it on your own. You can figure out what foods are best for you, right? And if you have the DNA data by your side, it makes things a lot easier. So the big thing, too, when it comes to weight loss, is that now we can start to understand genetics and obesity a step further by considering how the diet interacts with obesity genes. Right? Does it turn it on more? Does it turn it off when we eat more kale? Does it turn it on when we eat more Snickers bars? Right? And Nutritionomics basically shows us that certain diet modifications can help improve weight loss in those that have genetic risk alleles for obesity. Right? So we can start to change the dynamic. Okay? Not only for you, but for your offspring. Right? The two most unathletic people in the world, coming from a history of unathleticism, are not giving birth to Michael Jordan, right? There are certain mechanisms at play that that encoded for athleticism genes to be passed down from generation to generation to generation. And I'm telling you right now that it starts with you. If you're obese or overweight, you're more likely to have children that also have risk factors associated with the FTO gene that I mentioned before, and the expression of that, as well as the MC4R gene, right? So for instance, researchers showed that individuals with a specific risk allele in the FTO gene benefit from a higher protein diet. And when they had that higher protein diet, from a 2-year study, right, the carriers of the risk allele from the FTO gene had a greater reduction in fat and weight and fat distribution in response to the higher protein diet than those without the risk allele, right? So someone that takes in higher amounts of protein may likely feel, that have this risk gene, may likely feel more satiated. They're more likely to follow a diet that has high protein, and then they're able to make good, impactful decisions about their weight and behavior changes around that, which then in turn affects their calories in, calories out, which provides weight loss, right? Individuals with the MC4R risk allele can benefit from nutritional counseling to essentially mitigate hunger and food cravings. Okay, so it's not all, a matter of you're on the wrong diet. It could be behavioral things that you need. And psychologists, especially in food behavior, and nutrition coaches are popping up everywhere to help people not only understand the education around food, which is primarily what we do at CBG, but also how your thoughts around food and your mentality and mindset around food are also affecting you to not get the results that you want, right? And this could be simple as practicing like mindful eating along with that higher protein diet and healthy fats that promote feelings of satiety and fullness. I mean, it could be very simple things like that, right? So when it comes to behavior change, right, it should not be lost on dietitians and nutrition coaches like myself to impact personalized diets. It's just not you just don't want to avoid this completely. And behavior change and compliance have a lot to do with the impact on personalized diets. Okay, so as a dietitian, right, who uses these DNA tests, nutrigenomic testing, there are people that become receptive to recommendations or are more motivated to follow them. And research backs this up, right? So research shows the use of nutrigenomic testing for personalized diets leads to better compliance, long-term maintenance of diet, and weight loss. I mean, this is the whole thing, right? A lot of people are able to lose the weight initially, but 2/3 of people put the weight back on or more. These behavioral changes that are associated with these genes, okay? And the specific dieting recommendations, like following a higher protein diet versus higher carbohydrate or lower fat, and then all the vitamins and minerals that you might digest or absorb better than others, all these can be improved, okay? First diagnosed, and then inputting foods that impact the behavioral change around these foods. So far, like researchers have basically found that sugary beverages, fried foods, saturated fat seem to trigger obesity genes in people that are at a genetic higher risk of obesity. So those are foods that you want to avoid, right? The same people can help suppress the effects of the obesity genes by exercising, sleeping well, or potentially even drinking more coffee, depending on if you're a fast or slow metabolizer, right? So there was another study where a team used the results of genetic testing, nutrigenomics, for 100 obese people and provided them with 600 fewer calorie than usual. So a 600 calorie deficit. And the control group was also placed on a 600 calorie deficit untailored diet, not specific to their genes. After 2 years, both groups had lost weight, obviously, right? Because both the groups are at a caloric deficit. But those in the nutrigenomic group lost 33% more, right? And they also took only 1 year to lose as much weight as the group on the untailored diet that took 2 years, right? So these are just some of the statistics out there. These are just some of the research studies out there that there's more personalization that can be done besides your body weight, height, age, BMR calculator, calories in, calories out, right? Look, you have to be at a caloric deficit regardless, meaning that the amount of calories that you take in has to be less than the calories out. But what affects calories out could be the absorption of the food that you're taking in, the stress hormones that are potentially affecting how you utilize food, right? Foods that may increase energy levels that will allow you to burn more calories at the gym. All these things in between affect you and affect your weight distribution, affect your weight loss, and then ultimately your sustainability to follow a diet or a diet that your body prefers, right? It only makes sense that you're more likely to follow a diet that your body prefers on a molecular level than a diet that your body doesn't like. Imagine that. Imagine that you found a new diet, keto. You're like, this is going to help me. This is it. And you do it. And in fact, you are a very bad metabolizer of fat and you need to be on a high protein diet. And you're doing a keto diet. You're doing almost the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. And the keto diet is not like this generalized thing that everybody should be doing. Some people may benefit from it. They may find it sustainable. Other people no. How do we figure that out? Every single diet is individualized, and it should be. And DNA is uncovering more information about you specifically. That's what's so exciting. So these are just some things that you can learn, and it's especially useful for clients who have found themselves stuck in their weight loss efforts or improving at the gym performance-wise, that having genetic insight into the types of diet that works best for them to help increase overall compliance and sustainability. That's the key. Can us uncovering your genes and what we know about the different prevalence of those genes help us find a diet that fits for you, that you can, one, feel more compliant with, not make it feel like it's a chore or that you have to feel disciplined to follow, and therefore make you feel more sustainable so that you can lose the weight that you want and then also keep it off, right? Or if you're that person at the gym, at your CrossFit gym that's trying to get that first bar muscle up, can optimizing human performance through your diet and getting in the right micronutrients, getting in the right macronutrients and the distribution of those macronutrients help generate more power output and help get you that first bar muscle up? Absolutely. I mean, this is our fuel is from our food. It's everything, right? It's everything. And we have to utilize all the information that we have. So is Nutritionomics at a point where you can get the DNA information and we can inject you with a syringe of everything you need for the day and then you can go about your business? No, but there is some data that can be uncovered that's useful, right? And if you're someone that hasn't been doing the basics like sleeping enough, getting enough water in per day, just eating overall fairly healthy foods, then the DNA data is only going to be one of those things that is the cherry on top for you. You haven't built the cupcake yet to put the cherry on top, or you haven't built the cake yet to put the cherry on top, right? So Nutritionomics is not going to come in and save your life, but there are definitely some things within the data that you can utilize to create key behavioral changes and start giving you foods that your body has actually been craving that you just didn't know, right? Foods that help that basically give you, the amount of zinc that your body actually needs based on its absorption rates, right? Or the appropriate amount of carbs to make sure that you're fueled properly for your workouts. All these things are included, right? So this is what Nutritionomics is. I think I'm going to do a separate podcast also on performance specifically, so how CrossFit athletes can utilize the Nutritionomics data and their DNA data specifically to improve performance. So stay tuned for that. But I wanted to just give a little glimpse of what Nutritionomics is, that we are what we eat, we are what our parents ate, we are what our grandparents ate, and that the change can start with you, and that your epigenetics can be expressed differently based off of the decisions that you're making and the interactions that you put yourself in. So, all right, guys, I thoroughly enjoyed talking to myself this entire podcast. I hope this was enough science for you. We're going to be back next week with another episode, but make sure you join that Facebook page. I'll put the link in the show notes. So if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Email us at consistencybreedsgrowth@gmail.com or head over to our website at consistencybreedsgrowth.com, and we will chat with you next time. Peace. It's science. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. We hope you enjoyed it. Keep tuning in every week for more incredible guests and ways to reach your max potential, both physically and mentally. please subscribe on iTunes or your preferred podcast app and let us know if you like this episode. Don't forget to check us out at consistencybreedsgrowth.com or on Instagram at CBG_online_sports for details on upcoming nutrition challenges or one-on-one coaching for weight loss, wellness, or performance. Also, feel free to join our free Facebook page at www.facebook.com/groups/CBG Nutrition Tribe.
Science.